Konnichiwa.
Howdy, y'all.
I'm Leslie.
I'm Laurie. Welcome to
Sumo Kaboom.
Kaboom,
where we talk about all things sumo.
Yes. And this week we're going to talk about one of our favorite wrestlers that we haven't talked about much at all.
From the past. He's actually
from
the past, but he's currently in the sumo world as an oyakata.
That's right. Musashimaru. And the reason we're talking about him is because I happened upon an article this week about there's a new kid in Musashimaru's stable, this new kid from America. And it just took me down this road, like, who is this kid? Where are these kids coming from? And that made me think, you know what? We have never done an episode on Musashimaru, and I think it's about time.
Yeah.
Because he's prominent in our Instagram feed, probably yours too.
Yeah, because I've creeped on him ever since I saw him live in person back when I was
Not that
in
you're
Japan.
name dropping or anything.
Well, I didn't meet him. I was just like a rando person in the stadium back May of 1998. But I had, I think, a Musashimaru keychain, I think, because I was an American. And then I was like, there's an American and he's crushing sumo.
Yeah.
So I've been a fan ever since.
Well, and if you've ever been on Twitter or Instagram and you've seen a picture of a young sumo wrestler probably holding a birthday cake with a candle in it, those are usually from Musashimaru's stable.
Yes.
He loves to take birthday photos of sumo wrestlers, which is great.
He is a great oyakata. He is, like the rest of them, probably hard as nails, and he's got to train some kids up to be pretty tough. But he balances it out, I think, with the soft side, which is the cakes and the pizza parties and the BBQ.
Which is what we all hope. We all hope that it balances
that's
out.
the case.
It's really all about popcorn movie nights.
That's right.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, how about a news flash? If you are on the socials and you follow former wrestler Yuta Takayama, you will be astounded at what he looks like because he's been training for half marathons and marathons. So he finished a half marathon and he's just skinny and he ran it in 2 hours and like 8 minutes or something. So his fitness goals are happening and he plans to run the Tokyo Marathon next year and continue to lose weight. But
every time I see him, I'm like, oh, that's Yuta Takayama at like half the size he was.
It's so bizarre. But
I love watching his
awesome.
change.
It's really cool. And he's so excited about it. So that's really fun. The other tidbit of information I wanted to give you all is that Wakataka Kage is back in action. He is in practice at the Arashio Beya, and his coach is saying that they're hoping, crossing fingers, that we will see him in Kyushu. He says, Wakataka Kage says, my knee is feeling much better. With that.
Yeah, I wish him all the luck. I hope he comes back, but only if he's healthy.
Only if he's healthy.
Yeah. Otherwise, just take another few months. Like, take the Hollywood season.
You're already going to be down at the bottom of the levels. You're going to crush all these poor kids down there.
Yeah. I think I said Hollywood season, but I meant holiday season.
Or Hollywood season.
Yeah, either one.
Either one works.
Either one. Just take the time.
Just take the time, please, because we want you to come back and crush it. But we did want to thank some of our recent donors. We see you and we adore you. And thank you all for helping us keep this ramshackle operation going.
Very appreciated.
It helps us in so many ways. So thanks again. Musashimaru. I had a really fun time finding interview information and finding old interviews because he speaks English. And so it's just a little bit easier for me to comprehend and kind of get a little snapshot of who he is as a person. And I'll first give you a little background on him, but then I wanted to kind of read you a couple of things that he said verbatim out of his mouth in English. And that's always kind of fun to just kind of hear his voice and how he speaks and what his thoughts are. He was the 67th Yokozuna.
So he did pretty well in the sumo world.
He did. So where he comes from, he was born in 1971.
He's my age.
Yeah.
This is what's so freaky. I am as old. Yeah, we're the same age.
And I still see him as like an elder.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
know.
like, he literally.
And look at what I've done with my life.
You've
I'm
done
sitting in a
things.
closet talking
You've done
about
some amazing things.
I have.
But he was born in American Samoa, and he's the fourth son. Now, there were 8 kids all in all. So let's say maybe when he first came out into this world, he had to fight for, I don't know. Not food, but he had to just fight for probably anything with 8 kids. But he was the fourth son of a German Tongan father and a Portuguese Samoan mother. And
that is a lot of culture in one household.
Yes. But they lived there for 10 years. And then at 10, then he moved to Oahu in Hawaii when he was 10. When he first came to Hawaii, he only spoke Samoan. And so he really, some of the interviews and some of the Wikipedia reports that he struggled with the English language. And so he also, it was reported he had a father who had some pretty strict rules around the house and about friends not being able to come over. So once he got to Hawaii, you could kind of sense maybe this kid gravitated towards sports because that was something he could do. He could learn the language at the same time, but it didn't involve having to know English, to succeed in school. And so he did have a little bit of a hard time there, but he eventually found football and Greco-Roman wrestling. Now, he was already a big kid. By the time he was professionally wrestling, you should know he was 6'3" or 6'4", 6'3 and a half or 6'4", and 518 pounds. So
big guy.
Yeah.
Big guy.
Yeah. And I think his high school coach or one of his coaches said, he kept putting on weight and he would basically weigh out of competition in high school. He was too heavy for some of these wrestling, tournaments. So
he couldn't compete?
Yeah. Because
they wouldn't let him compete?
Yeah. Because he was too big, which sounds weird. His coach at the time said, look, kid, why don't you look into sumo?
You're a big boy.
Yeah. And I don't know timing wise. I know when he came into the sport, which was in 89, I believe, Akebono was older than him. And we had Takamiyama. There were other legends from Hawaii. So, maybe he did at least grow up and being like, this is something other, guys have done and have done really well. So, hey, maybe I have a shot at it. I don't know. I'm putting words into his mouth. He may not have thought that. But
yeah. But his coach is definitely
his coach is like,
you're too big for some of these footballers.
Yes.
You're too big.
Yes.
Why don't you look at another contact sport where the big guys tend to hang out?
Right. But he had actually gotten scholarships to play college football back in the States, like Pasadena City College. And somewhere on the Wikipedia for the Japanese side, they said that I think he started like going down that path of going to college, but either due to financial reasons or what have you, he ended up deciding, okay, or he was scouted in some way. I think I am going to go the sumo route. And so he got, it was in 89, when he was 18, he packed up and he got a visa and he went to Japan on a trial basis to do sumo. This was a stable formerly known as Musashigawa. Currently it's known as Fujishima. During that time when he came to the stable, his oyakata was Yokozuna, former Yokozuna Mae Noumi. And he had height and weight on his side. And so this trial basis, he basically dedicated himself to sumo. Now, he didn't know Japanese, but he just... He had the advantages he had, but he worked really, really hard. And so he was given the shikona Musashimaru, which is the shikona is the first part of his stable. But the last part, interestingly enough, is part of his real name. And his real name when he was born is Fiamaru Penitani. So they took off that malu or maru off of the end of that and then smashed it together. He made his pro debut in September of 1989 and pretty much skyrocketed up the ranks. I think his pro debut, he got a 7-0 record or something like that. So in 2 years' time, he was in Juryo. And when he debuted in Juryo, he won the tournament in Juryo. And so he crushed it and found himself in Makuuchi just 2 months later in 1991, November of 91. About 6 months later, he was already in Sanyaku with being a komusubi.
Wow.
2 tournaments later, he was a sekiwake. So once he became a sekiwake in July of 1992, he spent about 9 tournaments at sekiwake. But he kind of, I wouldn't say that's a struggle, but he sort of slowed down at that point. But pretty much prior to that was like, I'm just going to take the express elevator to the top. And he did. Now, once he was there for a year and a half, he finally made it to Ozeki and began an incredible, this is what I didn't remember. He had a 32 tournament run as an Ozeki.
Wow.
5 years.
Wow.
Like before he became a Yokozuna. It should also be noted that up to that point, this is a crazy fact, he had only had 1 Makekoshi record. By the end of his career, he had a 55 tournament record of only Kachikoshi records. And he had still had more Kachikoshis than that. That was just the run of them between his very first Makekoshi back in Makushita at Makushita 11 in like the first, not the very first tournament, but like the 4th or 5th tournament, a complete run of Kachikoshis until many, many years later, 55 tournaments later.
That's amazing.
He did have other tournaments that he was out due to injury, but that he was on. So he was kind of known as somebody who, and he still has this point of view today, like if you get injured, you just keep going, or you just fight through the pain. There was no stopping. And it makes you think, 1 of 8 kids, like, yeah, you can survive. Amongst chaos, you can survive through being in a different country, and learning all those traditions and studying Japanese and all the ways of the world of Japan and then crushing it in the dojo. So, and that Makekoshi early on in his career was due to an injury. I think it was a collarbone. So that was the only, he still fought, but that was the only one that was kind of due to injury. He finally became a Yokozuna after 2 back-to-back tournament wins with 13-2 records in March and May of 1999. By July 1999, he made his debut, but he didn't win that first debut tournament, but he did win the next 2. So he's like, hi, I'm a Yokozuna. I'm going to get my bearings. And then the next 2 tournaments, I'm going to take home the trophy. Now, also, you have to remember, he was during the era of Akebono and the Wakataka brothers. So this was a legendary time of more recent, of more recent sumo history where you had 4 Yokozunas reigning. We've only seen 1, it seems like, forever.
2.
1 dominating
tops,
forever. And we've seen Kakaru and we've seen Hakuho and Terunofuji, but
Kusenasato.
Yeah, exactly. But once he
not four dominant ones at the same time.
Right. Like, that's why I think it was so much of a craze back then for me, even. There was just so many eyes on this sport because it was very exciting, intense competition. Somewhere in 2000, he suffered an injury. Now, this was a left wrist injury. It was a tendon injury. And I think by the end of his career, he admitted that it was like, I don't think I had any tendons attached. At this point.
Wow.
And get this, because of his big size, they couldn't put him fully under anesthesia. So he had surgery on his left wrist without proper anesthesia. And he had the surgery done and he still came back and continued to fight and win tournaments after that. In the end, it was a combination of that left wrist injury, which plagued him forever. But also, he never admitted until after he retired that he had suffered a high school injury, I think in his neck, way back when. Never really dealt with it, just fought with it. And so those 2 things brought him down in the end. But it was an amazing career. Amazing
I'm still stuck
career.
on why couldn't they put him under anesthesia?
He was 518 pounds. I have no idea.
Does that matter? I mean, I'm no doctor, but
I don't know.
thought you could put anyone under anesthesia.
I don't know.
That seems really weird. That just seems like a local legend. Like, our Yokozuna is so immune to pain
Well, maybe
that
it
he
is.
had wrist surgery without being put under.
I mean, maybe. It came straight from Japanese Wikipedia.
That just seems like a myth.
Well,
I don't
maybe
know.
it is.
If someone is a doctor out there and knows that you just can't put anyone under if they're over 500 pounds, please call me and let me know.
I don't know, but that's what it said. But, the end of his Yokozuna career there was a young whippersnapper coming up at that time. And that began the reign of Asashoryu as a Yokozuna. So that's kind of where he lies in the big old history of all of that.
Would you say he's well loved?
He is well loved and well respected, and he worked really hard. And when he first came into sumo, he won. Obviously, he was known as having an incredibly strong lower half. His legs were unstoppable, meaning they were just beyond power.
Looked great in heels.
Looked great in heels. Oh my God. Could you imagine him in heels? What size those have to be?
Yep.
Anyway, he won most of, in the beginning, like a lot of guys do, with oshidashi and yorikiri, about 60% of the time. But towards the end of his career, he developed better mawashi technique. So he was impossible to move, and he was incredibly strong. But
you're moving 500 pounds.
Yeah, 518, I think.
Oh my God.
So that's pretty impressive.
That's a lot of man.
Yeah. His career record, it was 779 wins, 294 losses, and I think 115 absences, 12 makauchi tournaments, 1 juryo, 1 sandame, 1 jonokuchi.
Oh, you're talking he won those?
Yep, these are tournament wins.
Okay.
So then he got outstanding performance, fighting spirit, and technique, 2 techniques. And I think when you look at his, you understand the level of Yokozuna he had to be competing at that time. And then you look at that record and you're like, well, he won a lot of them. To win those, he had to get through not only all the other Yokozunas, all the other Ozeki and lower ranked guys who might have been surprised. He was competing against some of the best.
Mm-hmm.
I found this random interview, and he was asked about what one of his favorite moments was from his career. And he said that a match against Takano Hano, which I think was one of his rivals, but not rivals, but somebody that he knew. Mm-hmm. This guy is really, really tough to beat. And it was like the last day, and they were both 12-2, and the tournament would be decided that day between him and Takano Hana. Mm-hmm. And he had almost lost. He was holding Takano Hana's mawashi with only one hand, but he said it was his lucky hand. And he succeeded in pulling it off. Not the mawashi, but the bout. And he had also mentioned about Takano Hana, there was a match which he was either a tournament win or he was runner-up. He ended up being runner-up. But he had known Takano Hana had a bad injury. And he decided, when he went into it, he was really nervous fighting Takano Hana because he knew about his severe injury. Yeah. And it was it's not that he hesitated, but he was thoughtful about Takano Hana's, like making it even worse. And he ended up losing. And his coach came to him and like the next day and was like, what happened? He admitted that he was like, I was thinking of, someone I respect in his injury, and I was thoughtful of that, and sensitive of his arm. And his coach was like, no. And wow. Normally you have a week off after a tournament, and his coach was like, you start practicing tomorrow. You are a Yokozuna and you win. Wow. There is no room for thinking of other people. But it kind of gives you a little insight about, he's like a caring dude. Like, why we watched Abi win, and it was Takayasu who was injured.
And we hated it.
And because we're like, and Takakeisho, I always thought Takakeisho in that playoff knew that Takayasu was injured and was like, if I lose this to Abi, at least my friend over here won't hurt himself even more. I kind of think of it as that moment. These guys are real guys, and they honor each other and each other's abilities, and to give them that challenge. So I thought that was kind of an interesting story. He also, I think, like I said before, he likes to train up some amazing kids these days, but give them barbecue and pizza and makes them feel a little bit more at home. And maybe that has to do with him fitting in, in Japan. Often his interviews these days, I saw a video of him, and Konishki's mostly speaking, but he said in I think 2 or 3 interviews that I saw, he prefers to have the interviews in Japanese because his English, he says, is rusty. And so he's been there for so long. And so he still, though, will like chime in English and everything. But he's very much Japanese now, but still has that sort of sweet spirit about him. Has gone through some health issues. Was it 2017? He had a kidney transplant.
From his wife, right?
His wife, who, he got married to a lovely woman who runs a hula dance school. They have a kid, and he was like on a golf trip or something. Anyway, he fainted or something happened, and they were like, looks like you need a kidney. His wife was like his angel.
Can you imagine what a diminutive kidney it would be in comparison?
I mean, but
to
then maybe
a large 500. Maybe organs don't change size, but I would just imagine this little pea-sized kidney being put into this Musashimaru.
Yes,
but I don't know.
Well, he's much smaller now. He's like 200 pounds lighter. Like, he is much smaller now. He's still big guy. He's not like Yu Takayama running marathons. He's still a very large man. No.
Yeah. He's a big boy.
He is. Also, fun things to know about him. He was also great at basketball. He said he can dunk. And I was like, I need to see that.
Nice.
He's his hobbies include playing games and listening to music.
Okay.
And he says he likes tough meat and white rice. I also think
meat.
I think that's a Japanese translation.
Okay. Tough meat. I'm like, what could that be? Tough meat. Do you think that's steak?
It might be.
Or do you think it's overcooked chicken so that it gets to be
really
rubber?
Into like charred meat.
I would think that if he hangs out with Konishiki, they barbecue quite a bit together.
Yeah,
right?
Well, Konishki's always barbecuing.
Yeah. Just
a couple of other fun tidbits. He doesn't like to fly, at least at this point in his career when one of these interviews was done back in like 2006. It was early on in his career of being an oyakata. He says he doesn't really like to fly because you have to think small to fit in the plane. You can't think big. You have to think small. And he often has to buy like 3 seats. So it's kind of uncomfortable for him on a plane.
Yeah.
And it hurts his hips and his back being kind of crunched up like that. And he also says the food on an airplane is terrible and it gives him heartburn. So underneath all this is quite a funny guy,
the
right?
The life of a retired sumo. Well, I guess he's not retired. The life of an oyakata,
right?
Having been a sumo wrestler and having to walk around with a big body, it's tough.
Yeah, but he is really a tough critic. I'm sure they all are. It's just he's very vocal about current wrestlers and what he thinks about them. And I appreciate that. But other people like Konishiki, other people have said about him, though, and why he was successful is he's actually pretty easygoing. He has this kind of spirit about him where he never really got like wrapped up in the nervousness and the paranoia of like going into these big things. He had just an easygoing attitude about it. He was just like, if I practice, if I just put my nose to the ground, is that the phrase? We'll call it a phrase.
Nose to the grindstone?
The grindstone, or just nose to the ground?
Let's just say nose to the ground. I like that.
I like nose to the, he just put his nose to the ground, nose to the clay, and he did the work, and the work gave him great results. He also ate a lot. He showed up at like 290 and he got to 530 pounds. So the guy's got staying power when it comes to eating white rice and chanko.
And tough meat.
Yeah. But he said, he's like, and you have to drink a lot of beer, a lot of stuff. But he backed off of that later in his career. And obviously that's helped him take the weight off, which I was like, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That does put weight on you. He's a Japanese citizen now, lives very much a Japanese life.
Okay.
He's coaching some amazing kids, and I really do enjoy looking at his social media from the stable because it's always like an adorable kid with a cake smiling. And you're like, I believe in this kid.
I know.
But it's been hard for him. He also said recruiting, because he's Hawaiian.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a harder time recruiting top dogs. So he often takes kids that don't have a lot of experience and they're newer to sumo. So maybe that's kind of his softer, sweeter approach. It's hard work. His one interview said like they went and observed practice, and he's a man of few words. He doesn't say anything for like an hour and a half of this one, So probably you'd be scared of him and fear him. But on the other side of that, when you're teaching new kids how to do sumo, you still have to make them want to stay. And this is probably a balance of strict dad, but he gives you a pizza party occasionally on a weekend.
My one question is, are you going to reach out to him over social media and say, hey, we just did this episode. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I do want to ask him if this is a true story. He doesn't sign autographs because they have their, what's it called? Their handprint thingy-mabobby. I was in New Orleans. Again, forgive me. He said that a girl came to the stable to ask for an autograph. And the piece of paper she was actually carrying was a marriage certificate already filled out with her name and his name. And she just needed his signature.
Oh, that's a little creepy.
Yes. And he said he didn't even know this lady. And then she got really crazy when he told her to go home. And then she grabbed a golf club and started swinging it, and they had to call the police. And then they were like, the interview was like, did anyone get hurt? And he said, well, he broke her heart, but.
Oh, we have to know if that's true.
Well, I think that was from this Washington Post interview. So the Washington Post tends to be pretty legit.
You have got to send that to them and say, is this true?
Is this true? Isn't that funny?
Whoa. Wow. Was that during his heyday, or was that just last week?
I think that was during his heyday.
Okay. Oh my god.
He's a married man now.
Wow. A married man, a happily married man.
She's like, just can you sign your autograph right here? I'm like, this is a marriage certificate.
So creepy. Ooh. Well, as I said earlier, there was an announcement that came out this week that there is a new American kid at Musashigawa Stable this week, and his name is Daniel.
Daniel.
No last name. But I thought, when I saw this come across my desk, I thought, oh, great. This is a kid we'll start to see fight.
And this is not his nephew, because I know he had a nephew.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay.
I will tell you more about that.
Okay, good.
So this kid, Daniel, is a new kid on the block at Musashigaru's stable, but we're not going to see him fight.
Musashigawa?
Yes. We're not going to see him fight right away. And there are lots of other kids like him in sumo who are in his position. Kids that have an interest in sumo, but kids who are just beginning their sumo school training at the Heya. And for kids like Daniel, who comes from Hawaii, they have an entire language and a culture to learn.
Right.
So they do take place in some training, but they go to sumo school. So we're not going to see him for at least 6 months, if not longer. So we're not going to see him until maybe late 2024.
Okay.
Up there on the dojo, right? Because they just have a lot to learn about the structure of sumo. He's probably going to cook and clean a lot.
Yeah.
But, he'll be baking in the oven like a cheesecake, right? Am I just remembering weirdly, in our Pimsleur Japanese course, was cheesecake cheesy cakey?
Cheesy cakey.
Cheesy
it was
cakey?
something like cheesy cakey or something, yeah.
I don't know why that just popped into my mind. Yeah.
Oh, this is a tidbit of news I forgot to tell you. I did see this in the feed. Did you know, I think it's Oho now that he lives by himself and he's not married, he has taken up baking. And he has become like an expert baker. And
really?
He posts pictures of beautiful rolls and breads. And that's what he does with his spare time. And I'm not talking, he's just making a simple white bread loaf. He's making French, like, batards.
Nice.
Yeah. Like, it's impressive. That's
awesome.
Side note.
Yeah.
We should just all know these things.
I just love it.
We have a baker amongst us.
Yeah. Well, so just for fun, I thought what I would do is I would look up this kid, Daniel, see what I could find out about him, because he's our latest American recruit. According to John Jacks, he's from the same area, and went to the same high school as Musashimaru.
Oh.
And Tachiai blog says that this kid graduated high school over the summer.
Okay.
And then went to Japan. The internet, after a little search, says that his older brother is or was Musashikuni Mamu.
Okay.
Who is the former Rikishi, who was active for about 6 years.
Yes.
And was and is Musashimaru's nephew. So I think we can assume that this kid, Daniel, is probably his nephew as well.
Okay, yeah, because when I looked at the picture, I was like, one of these things actually looks like the other.
Looks like, yeah, he looks very similar.
Yeah. If this kid is not related to him, I'd be like, that's bizarre. Because they look very similar.
Yeah, so I think we could assume that nepotism is alive and well, and that this kid, I said that kind of tongue-in-cheek. I really did.
Right.
But he does come from the same area in the same family. But we could assume that he's
good stock.
Probably going to be a big kid.
Yeah. I mean, you're like, this is where I came from. He's got good genes.
Yeah.
So...
Really, really good genes. And his older brother was active in sumo for about 6 years. His highest rank was Makushita. His older brother, this kid's older brother, is most famous on the boards for completely knocking out one of his opponents in a sumo match.
Wow.
But that older brother recently retired. So what's most interesting to me is that his uncle is, or seems to be, Musashimaru. We can assume, or at least gonna be big.
He's gonna be big.
Yeah.
And he's adorable.
He's, very cute.
Adorable eyes.
That's
very cute.
all we know about this kid, which is relatively nothing.
Well, I mean, he was kind of back in Hawaii, just probably going to school, like, besides finding his, like, Facebook page, which we haven't done. Like, well,
because I don't know this kid's last name.
And you don't want to creep on a kid. That's weird.
Exactly.
Yeah, but let him be anonymous.
Yeah, but what I can say, so it just took me down the road of Hawaiian sumo again.
Right.
Let me take this back a little bit. I saw a picture of John Gunning, looking really tiny, standing next to Kenna. Okay, so all roads in Hawaiian sumo either lead to Musashimaru and Kanishiki in the pro sumo level, or they lead to John Jacks and Kenna Heffernan, who are training up kids often, and international sumo wrestlers in Hawaii. All roads seem to lead to those people in Hawaiian sumo. So I saw this picture of John Gunning looking tiny standing next to Kenna. And then I saw another picture of Kenna looking tiny compared to Musashimaru. Oh. And I thought, okay, Musashimaru was that big.
Yeah.
That big. And so that made me go, oh, well, no wonder they're really interested in anyone related to Musashimaru, because they could get that large.
Right.
And that's pretty amazing. Just as a reminder for anyone who's interested in Hawaiian sumo, if you're in Hawaii, you can look up John Jacks. We did an episode on him that you could look up. I don't know our episode number.
Yeah, great guy.
Really amazing guy.
Such a champion of the sport.
Yeah. Or you could, if you're in and around Honolulu, you can look up Kenna Heffernan, who is teaching free sumo for boys and girls in Honolulu. And it's also worth mentioning that Kenna took a group of kids to the Hakaho Cup this year in February. It was the first time they went in about 3 years, and they did very, very, very well. Here's another example of talent in Hawaii, and this is from the team that went to the Hakaho's Cup, the group that Kenna teaches. There is a kid in that group nicknamed Yaya. They call him Yaya. Let me see if I can get his name correct. His official name is Uraya Ulima Kanahau Luamanu. And this kid is in 5th grade, and he is 5'9", and weighs 209 pounds in 5th grade.
That sounds like my 5th grade. I look like a student teacher, like, because I matured early and I was held back, so
really?
I look like a grown woman in 4th grade, 5th grade. It definitely had an effect on me.
I was a beanpole. I was thin as a rail, and you could have knocked me over with a feather in 5th grade. But this kid, Yaya, who, it seems to me, that's quite big and quite tall. That's as tall as I am in 5th grade. He went to the Hakuho Cup in February, and he was the first wrestler outside of Japan or Mongolia to ever medal in that event in all of its 13-year history. He won a bronze medal in a elementary school 5th grade category.
Yeah. That's awesome. Bring
Yeah.
back the Hawaiians.
Right?
Bring them back. They're huge and they're fierce and they're strong. Bring them back.
So this kid, Yaya, he plays football at home, and he's only doing sumo to improve his flexibility and his balance. But at the Hakuho Cup, he got to train at Musashimaru stable. He also got to go to Hakuho stable and train a little bit.
Wow.
So there are direct connections from these Hakuho Cup, Kenna, John Jacks, all these local kids in Hawaii direct to Musashimaru's stable. So Musashimaru is still training up these Hawaiian kids and giving them opportunities that just don't seem to exist anywhere else in the US.
Well, and he can only have one foreign kid in his stable.
Right, at a time.
Right, but he might be able to get another Hawaiian kid in another stable as the sole foreigner.
Exactly. I mean, you bring in a whole bunch of kids, you have them train at your stable, you bring in your friends, you bring in people from other stables, and you say, hey, come over and just watch these kids.
Right.
See what they're doing back in my home state. And if you have an opening somewhere, consider these kids.
Right.
So between Musashimaru's family and Kanishki's sort of ambassadorship of the sport, and John Jacks and Kenna's devotion to developing kids in Hawaii and to helping create and educate sumo programs online, like sumo really continues to be an avenue for athletes in America. And they all love to talk about the importance of full contact sports and learning to the respect and the sense of accomplishment that comes with the hard work and devotion in sumo. And it's just really great to see an article like that come out in the news. Like, here's this kid, Daniel, local Hawaiian kid, coming to Japan to train with his uncle. And we just can't wait to see what comes for Daniel and for many other kids that might have the same dream.
I hope big things.
Yeah, we just wish you well, Daniel. You're in a great place. Learn from Musashimaru.
Musashigawa now.
Yes. Just call him Mushy. I'm sure he'll love it.
I'm sure that's the fastest way to earn yourself an extra hard training session. Well, I mean, isn't it Kotonowaka who doesn't refer to his dad as like, that's my dad? Like, his dad
It's like, thank you, master.
Yes. So,
Thank you, master. Right?
His
See,
uncleship is gone for a while.
These family dynasties, they're all over the place in the sumo world and in Hollywood, to tell you the truth.
I mean, in Hollywood, it's very similar. Very similar.
Yeah. The training is just as tough.
Just as difficult.
Genes do seem to be very important in Hollywood and in sumo.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
And that's really all I've got on this kid named Daniel, who is joining the sumo world and representing America.
That's right. Let's cheer him on.
Yep.
And I'm always shooting for a win for Musashigawa as well. Like, I always want some of his wrestlers to, be working their way up the ranks and to see them. And to know he's still dealing with people who, like recruiting issues.
Or just I thought you were going to say trying to marry him. Still dealing with random crazy women who are trying to get him to sign marriage certificates.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening, Musashigawa Oyakata, big fans here.
Yeah, we won't ask for your autograph.
We won't.
Nope.
And if we did, it's not a marriage contract.
Yeah, that's right.
Although both of us are single, but we understand you are not.
Yeah.
All right.